Hello, everyone, and welcome to the OnlyLandFans Show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our Masterclass guest today is Ajay Sharma. Ajay Sharma has been investing in vacant land since September of 2020. After working in the land business part-time for just 18 months, Ajay transitioned to full-time at the age of 23. Since then, he has completed several deals in all shapes and sizes, ranging from a few $1,000s in profits to a few $100,000 in profits. Ajay now runs a team with a COO and 3 acquisition staff that are doing consistent multi-5-figure months. Ajay, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
I am living the dream, Kendall. How are you?
Love it. Doing well. I'm so excited because we get to talk to one of my favorite people about one of my favorite subjects. And so you are back by popular demand. You are on our original podcast, and now you're part of our masterclass series, diving deep into a very specific topic. Let us know what that topic is going to be.
Yep. So today we are going to be talking sales process. And what that really means is how do we buy deals for less? How do we sell deals for more? And how do we just build more acquisition, consistency, and predictability into your land business?
I love that. And so, can you talk a little bit about why that's important? Why did you pick that topic of all the topics that you are absolutely amazing at? Why this topic?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, Kendall, that I have heard from people as I came up, and I'm still coming up, don't get me wrong. But as I was coming up, that you should be the mentor that you wish you had. And to be honest, I think the deficit that I had for a very long time in scaling up my land business, building predictability in, was on the lead conversion side. And here's what I mean by that is every land business, if you're trying to do more deals, basically has one of 2 problems. Okay. You either have a leads problem, you don't have enough leads, or you have a conversion problem. That's it. Those are the only 2 problems you can effectively have. Right now, there are reasons as to each one of those. Maybe cash is a constraint, maybe time is a bandwidth, maybe staff is a bandwidth. Regardless, you can boil it down to one of those 2 things. You either have a leads problem or a conversion problem. I can generate leads. Everybody in this business understands generating leads is, I don't want to say easy, but it's pretty easy, right? You pick a marketing channel, there's tons of them out there: direct mail, RVMs, cold texting, cold calling, pay per lead, pay per click, SEO. There's no shortage of ways to generate leads, right? Go door knocking. No, don't do that. That's a terrible way to do deals in land. But the point being, you generate leads, right? I find very few investors have issues when it comes to lead gen. And where most people truly struggle is lead conversion. And I sought out a lot of different mentors, both from YouTube University and also paid mentorships. I'm in the Collective Genius Mastermind. I've watched a lot of Eric Brewer's trainings in that time. I've been through some of Cole Gordon's trainings. I've watched a lot of Jeremy Lee Minor. Jenny Hudspeth is somebody we've trained with pretty consistently. That's just a short list of different sales trainers we've worked with both in and outside of the RE space. And in that time, I picked up all types of stuff that have helped us convert more deals just through certain follow-up processes. Then there's different sales scripts, sales techniques, talk tracks that we've been able to integrate that have consistently helped us do more deals, right? And I'll also just start by saying that I'm synthesizing from things that I've learned. I didn't invent anything. And I think anybody who teaches sales at any level would agree that there's nothing new under the sun. There's new ways to package things up, but I didn't invent any of this stuff. I'm synthesizing a lot of what I've learned from both experience and what I've heard from a lot of other people. So I'll start with that, Kendall.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And also to that point, I think that you and I have talked about this topic quite a bit. And I think we're both in agreement the fact that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The reason why you're not creating something new is because there are already sound fundamentals that are universal when you're looking at certain topics like sales and leads, conversion, that type of thing. And so the long story short is that you don't have to create something new, right? There are fundamentals that we can borrow from many different industries that are already super successful, and it will cut your time in half in terms of trying to figure out what works. It's already been done. The very first topic that I'd like to talk to you about is one of the very first things that we talked about when we were preparing for this. It's the how do you buy for less? Talk to us a little bit about what that entails and how you go about doing that.
Totally. The first thing I will say, gosh, there are so many things going through my brain. I first just want to break a couple of limiting beliefs that I think a lot of people have. First of all, people like to say they have bad leads. I think that's garbage, to be honest. If you have a pool of sellers that have indicated any interest of selling a property through self-election, they're not bad leads. Oftentimes it's bad sales and bad sales process. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some people that are difficult to work with. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you can generate leads and you could generate 100 leads tomorrow through some RVM or some text campaign, you can convert some of those deals, especially assuming you do some form of double close where you can offer more than just the traditional 30 to 50 cents on the dollar. If you can make a margin of 20, 30, $50,000 on a wholesale deal, there is a lot of ways to monetize this business. And so I just want to start by saying, oftentimes people are just bad at sales rather than being bad at leads. And a lot of us are just so coddled because back in 2019, 2021, this business was so easy. And when I say easy, I just mean you could send out, I remember I would send out like 1,100 letters and I would make $40,000 off of that. And very few businesses have a consistent return on ad spend of, gosh, what would that be? 80x? That might have been bad math, but 40K on $500 of ad spend, somewhere at 80x, that's mind boggling, right? If you could put $1 in an ATM and get $80 out, you should do that as many times as you can every single day of your life. And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
anyways, I bring that up to say, yeah, the market's changed. People are more aware of what properties are worth. People are more savvy and have gotten a lot of letters and have gotten a lot of messages. Don't get me wrong, but they've still self-elected that they'd be interested in selling the property, which means through good sales process, yes, a minority, but some population of your lead flow will take a discount for customer service, right? I say a lot of times this business is very similar to a car dealership, CarMax, whatever you want to call it, right? When you go to the car dealership, do you know you're getting ripped off? Yes. Do you still sell your car to the dealership? Personally, no. I actually did trade in a car to the dealership and I knew I was getting ripped off and I knew they were going to go sell it for double what I gave it to them for. And I didn't care because it was easy because I was buying a new car and I just wanted to be done with it. And so I bring that all up to say, we are a service, which means we need to prioritize customer service in this business, which is where sales process becomes really important. So anyways, all of that is just a foundational, hey, let's break some limiting beliefs. The first one I want to break is just when people say it's a bad lead because they like are asking for too much money. Dude, I ask for too much money when people want to buy my properties too. Right.
Yeah. And that's a great point too, because I hear oftentimes like it's a bad lead because they're not motivated.
Yeah.
And I say this all the time, especially when you're dealing with vacant land. If you're coming from a different like niche, right? If you're coming from like house wholesaling where the house is like in disrepair, falling apart, maybe it's a burn down or something. That's a different type of motivation from the type of motivation that you're going to experience when you're dealing with vacant landowners. So yeah, go ahead. I got super excited because I'm like, yes, you're speaking my language. Let's do this.
I got to stand because I'm getting excited, Kendall. And we haven't even scratched the surface on some stuff I want to get into today. All of this is just foundational for people that haven't heard me speak before. But here's what I'll say is like, number one, I don't care what somebody's asking price is. And here's an example. We had a property that just came into our pipeline recently. The seller wanted $450,000. Okay. We comped the property and we had comped it somewhere between, I think it was 180 to 250, kind of a range. It was a rural area. And so our team came in with an offer at 130. This guy's original asking price was 450. Okay. And we worked through it and I'll get into some stuff our team did, but number one, we made the offer. Okay. And there's just a point that I wanted to hammer for anybody that hasn't heard me before. Really simple stuff. Make the offer, always make the offer. Okay. And the reason for that is Alex Hormozy frequently talks about studying what activities, if you neglected, would kill your business. If I stopped making offers on properties, I would no longer be buying properties, right? So you can recognize that the offer presentation is one of the most high leverage activities in the business. Now, there's a lot that goes into before we present an offer. And notice I'm using that word present, right? Because I want this to seem like a presentation when my team is doing this with sellers. This shouldn't just be, hey, Mr. Seller, 20 grand. No, okay, bye. Because truthfully, this is an emotional thing. Okay. If I try to sell with logically, there are much fewer reasons as to why somebody should sell me a property at a discount, especially if they're not motivated in like the general sense, right? And a lot of times we are needing to move into the emotion and figure out what their pain points are in their general life, especially just pain points that can be solved with money. Guys, the average American has less than $500 in their bank account, right? A quarter of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, might be slightly higher than that. I promise if you are able to offer somewhere between $15,000 and $200,000 for a property that they weren't intending on using, there is a high likelihood that changes their life, and it is your job to figure out how. Okay. And so, anyways, I bring that all up to say I don't care what somebody's asking price is on this property where somebody said they wanted 450. Long story long, we got it under contract at 140, and we just got a realtor OPV that drove this property twice, walked it. It's worth 300 to 350. Okay. And so all that
Wow.
to say, make the offer. All right.
Yeah. Oh man. Wow. That's huge. Because I know I talk to a lot of people that they prejudge the lead by if there's something that they maybe they're doing cold calling or doing texting, and someone will immediately respond with an asking price. If
Right.
that asking price is way much higher, way higher than what you can pay for it, people don't even make the offer. They're just like, oh, that's a bad lead, I'm going to skip over it. And it's you're leaving money on the table, right?
Ridiculous. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And in that light, though, here's something that I think a lot of investors get frustrated about that I want to break some conventional wisdom on. Okay. And for some context, apologies, Kendall. My team did not send you the most updated list of our staff. That's my fault. But we actually have 7 on staff now. It was 8 this morning and we let somebody go. But we have
Ah.
7 on our staff, not including Ben and myself. So a team of 9 total. In that, though, our structure is a 2-call close. And what I mean by that is a lead comes in, a lead manager speaks to them, and they do not present an offer on that first call. Now, there are some systems you really need to put in place if you're going to do a 2-call close and not make an offer on the first call, because your probability of getting a lead back on the phone after you've spoken with them once decreases as time goes on. Okay. And so you want to prioritize getting to them quickly and moving through the system. And we'll speak to that a little bit later. I know I'm talking really fast. I get really excited about this stuff.
I
So,
love it. I want it all. Give it
yeah.
all.
So we do a 2-call close, first call lead manager, second call offer presentation. In that, I'm trying to remember why I was bringing this up. Oh, okay. Because I tell my lead managers, people that don't put a lot of process in place with their lead managers, leaving money on the table, in my opinion. And here's why. Here's a really high leverage thing your lead managers can do if they're good is uncover true asking price, right? You get so many sellers that are combative and say, you called me, you texted me, you mailed me, make me an offer, right? And hey, like, I get it. Now, what I can tell you is that we have seen, in terms of tracking variables, more talk time typically means more rapport, which ends in the result of a seller volunteering asking price more often than not. Okay. And here's the conventional wisdom that I want to break is in a traditional 2-call close formula, a lot of people will teach you that the job of the lead manager is basically just to qualify whether this person has a pulse and wants to sell. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Like you need to figure out what business you want to run. However, what I'll tell you is we will go after deals more aggressively if an asking price has been volunteered that I know I can do. Here's an example is we have a property that's in our pipeline right now. The seller said they want 80 grand. My team comped it at 180, right? That's a great deal. I love a 6-figure deal, right? I do a deal like that every day of my life if I could, but it went through our traditional follow-up and my acquisitions manager deprioritized it because it had been a week of following up and we hadn't gotten back on the phone with them. I tagged them, and tomorrow when we do some sales training, I'm going to remind them that as a part of our process, we prioritize based on recency and urgency. Okay. And I'll speak more to that later, but there's a piece here of urgency where the seller has revealed something that makes us want to go after this deal more aggressively. Okay. Now, we would not have done that if my lead manager had not spent a considerable amount of time on the phone with the seller to uncover an asking price where we know we could do business with this property. Okay. So, first thing before we even get into offer presentation is in a 2-call close formula, the more talk time you spend, the higher the probability the seller trusts you enough, lets you in enough to give you their true asking price, which could allow you to more aggressively pursue a lead and lock that sucker up. So I'll start with that.
Love it. Love it. Completely following you. There are a few different schools of thought around getting to the asking price, right? So like some people won't, I've heard it said that some people won't ask them what they want for it because they want to be the first person to anchor the price. And I understand that. There are some people that say, I want to know how much they want to offer, how much they want for the property. But if you just say, okay, how much do you want for the property? They'll tell you something like 10 times what it's worth, right?
Sure.
So you mentioned uncovering the true asking price. So can you go into a little bit more detail about that and how do you go about doing that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I just want to reiterate that the philosophy here is that we don't like asking price is our last question in our lead manager script. Very last question. And ironically, we went back and looked at all the deals where we uncovered an asking price on a deal that became a deal because they told us that, hey, it's this price. We had a guy, and I think I've told you about this, Kendall. We had a guy that told us he wanted 160 for this beautiful 80-acre in Florida that we later double closed for 230. But we followed up with him daily for 3 months.
Because that's a lot of follow-up. That's a lot of follow-up.
Yeah. But I had 70, 80 grand in margin in this deal, right? And so when he finally talked to us, it was funny. He said to me, he said, Ajay, he got my number somehow. He said, Ajay, understand, every year I go off to a remote cabin in Alaska and I turn all my devices off. And I got out and I had more voicemails from your team than I had from any of my family members combined. So it seems like you guys really want this property. I'll give you my business. Is where he had finished off here. Okay. Now, what's interesting here is had we not gotten the asking price from our seller, we would not have pursued this deal so aggressively. It would have gone in some back burner after about 25 to 30 touches, which is what our team does. But we had an urgency variable there because this guy said he could do a deal, or he would sell the property for an asking price that we wanted. Now, the reason I'm bringing all this up is because when we went back and audited some cause and effect, we found that the talk time was typically 20 to 30 minutes at the lead manager level, which is a really long time for a traditional lead manager. Like your average lead manager call, if you talk to somebody, is typically going to be like 7 to 10 minutes a lot of times. But we were seeing really good results in the 20 to 30 range, which automatically means, hey, now this asset, this human capital is going to get less output in terms of numbers, but more efficiency in terms of knowing how we can do business with these properties. And so I bring that all up to say, there's no like magic science. We're just going through a lot of questions that most people would in that lead manager call. How long have you owned the property? Or are you the only person on title? What were you planning to do with it? Really basic stuff. But the goal is, hey, we're building rapport. We're talking to them throughout. And the longer we can talk, the more rapport we build, the more likely they are to volunteer what they would sell it for because you've had a good conversation with somebody, right? And when you have a good conversation with somebody, you begin to trust them. It humanizes them. You think they're a normal person, right? And so more talk time frequently gets you just like more rapport, which ends in people volunteering information. And we're salespeople. Okay. This is a marketing and sales business. And like you study the Andy Elliott's of the world, and they'll tell you that a salesperson's job is to help a prospect make a decision. Okay. That's the light we need to look through this with. And we tell them that sometimes on the closer call. I would say, hey, Kendall, my job at the end of this call is to help you understand what your next steps are for your property, regardless of if that's working with us or not. And so a lot of times people don't realize this, but my goal is to help you decide, should you work with us? Should you not work with us? Should you sell your property? Should you not sell your property? But do you know how I can help you make decisions? Is if you give me information, because then we can process together. To make decisions, you need information. And once you have enough information, you can make a decision. You don't need time to make decisions. You don't need other stuff. You need information. That's it. So if my job as a salesperson is to help somebody make a decision, I need them to give me information. What's that old Jerry Maguire? Help me, help you, help me, and all that brouhaha. And so I bring that all up to say, we're trying to get information from them, and longer talk time and more rapport helps us do those things. Okay. And I do want to mention, I know you're going to be dropping this later. I did put together a super basic script. And I say super basic because people love scripts. And I'm very hesitant. I've been very hesitant historically to share them because I'm a pretty good copywriter. I like writing scripts. However, I don't like putting sales in a box because it's so fluid based on prospects, based on the closer, the seller. Like when I sell, I use a lot of humor because I'm naturally a pretty funny person, or at least I don't know, I look funny, I don't know. But I sell with humor because that's how I do everything. But I would never subjugate one of my acquisition managers to sell with humor if that's not natural for them. So that's why I've always been super hesitant. Like I remember, and here was my learning lesson. I had an acquisitions manager. I tested US based versus overseas. Personally, I like US based. I think you just have to have a much stronger recruiting funnel and process if you're going to go overseas and scale a team that way. And I just didn't have that as I was building the business. We were newer, and there is a cultural literacy that I appreciated with having US based acquisition managers. Our lead managers are overseas, but our acquisition managers, the people presenting offers, are US based because I like that cultural literacy and I feel like they learn things a little bit quicker. Now, anyways, shoot, I lost my train of thought. Kendall, will you remind me where I was?
Yeah, you were talking about using humor in your
Humor.
sales
Yes, thank
process.
you. So when we were working with this Latin American acquisition manager, one of the things I had written into her script was basically we're trying to figure out what they were doing with money. Okay. And that's a very sensitive thing to ask of,
Yeah.
hey, dude, what are you going to do with the 40 G's I give you? And when you ask it like that, it can be very abrasive if you ask wrong. And again, I like humor because it keeps things lighthearted. So what I had written in the script was, oh, Kendall, let me ask you, are you going to buy another property or take your money and ride off into the sunset? If you
Yeah.
deliver it, it's lighthearted, assuming you've had some lighthearted conversation prior to that line, it hits fine. Okay. When it's not natural, it sounds horrible.
It really does.
Oh,
Yeah, it
whenever
really does.
I was doing call reviews and I heard it and was like, oh God, remove this, take it out. Don't use the line. Just let's keep it simple. Okay. And we'll share a lot of verbiage we use and questions we do and part of our sales process because we're big on kind of past, present, future negotiation talk track type stuff. And I think Kendall, your team will be dropping a link somewhere a little bit later. It's a really simple 2-page script that I pieced together. Use it, don't use it, I don't care. But I wanted to provide something of value as we're going into this. Remind me what your original question was and if I answered it.
Hey, land fans, looking for your tribe of serious land investors? Join thousands of your fellow land lovers in the OnlyLandFans Facebook group. We're talking real deals, expert strategies, and game-changing connections you won't find anywhere else. This isn't just another real estate group. This is the community where land investors come to level up. Join us at onlylandfansgroup.com and join the conversation today. That's onlylandfansgroup.com. See you there. Yes, you did answer the question. You answered probably about 15 questions in there. That's how good that was. So I want to ask you this question because this came up while you were talking about your approach to sales of
Okay.
using humor and it just being about helping them to make the best decision for their property as the positioned expert in the land space. And so that's a very different approach from trying to twist someone's arm that doesn't really want to sell their property and try to get it for as cheap as you can. And it becomes a sort of adversarial, like tug of war. So can you talk about like the finer points of that and how that helps? And how can you actually frame yourself that way so it doesn't become a combative type
Totally.
interaction and it's more of a team kind of thing?
Totally. And I train both my acquisitions team and my dispo team on this. I tell them, guys, you have to make the prospect feel like we're on the same team. Okay. I train you that this is a negotiation. You need to not let them think it is a negotiation. Okay. Now,
Right.
it's really high level and woo and visionary of me to say, here's what that tactfully looks like. Okay. Tactically looks like. All right. Is if I'm in a conversation and we're to the point where I've been through a lot of pre-framing, I've gone through some good questioning, I've uncovered potential deal killers and objections ahead of time, and we can speak a little bit to that in a bit. But if we're at the point in the conversation where we're getting closer to price, our team is trained to sell from the need. Okay. And so here's what that means is prior to that, you need to understand people are motivated by one of two things. I've talked about this before. Tony Robbins says every human is either running towards pleasure or running from pain. What I can promise you is pretty much every human in their life has some level of pain. Okay. Some level. I don't know what's going on, but it's our job to figure that out. Right. And typically we figure that out through in our sales process. We start with a light intro, then we frame the call. Hey, this is only going to take so long. Then we start with some past questioning. Past questioning sounds something like, hey, Kendall, I see you bought your property in 1981. What was going on in 1981? I really like soft ways to ask, why'd you buy the property? Because everyone says that. I want to know what was going on this year. And now you can say, oh, me and my wife had just moved to Alabama and we were thinking, one day we're going to build. But you get stories. You don't want to ask yes or no questions. So we start in the past. And typically when we bridge into the present and the future is when we start uncovering pain. Here's what that looks like for us is, got it. So Kendall, you were planning to build this cabin and it sounds like you're no longer doing that. Like what happened, right? So you're trying to bridge from past to present. And now it's, okay, in the present, how long have you been considering selling the property? Oh, about 6 months. Got it. What happened 6 months ago? Okay. So I'm trying to drill down on where the change was that made them even consider getting this property, getting money, whatever it was. But we look through the lens of time is where we train a lot of our staff, because us as humans, we perceive time through story. And what I mean by that is if you think about a year, you're going to put yourself in the shoes of what was going on in that time period. What was going on in Q1, and you're going to tell a story, right? I want my seller to tell me that story because it's more information that we can help them make a decision for, okay? Now I understand the question you asked, and I promise I'll get there, okay? Now, in this present format, got it. What changed? When did you consider selling the property? What happened 6 months ago? Oh, 6 months ago, my daughter got sick and we got this medical bill. And it was more just a thought of maybe we could get some money for the property. Oh my gosh, that's horrible. Has that been stressful for your family? Make them feel that pain. Yeah, it's been really stressful. Got it. I can only imagine what's going on, and I don't want to press too hard. But are you having to take care of her day to day? Or like, what exactly is stressing you out? What's stressful? Is it time? Is it money? Try to figure that out. And then it's honestly the biggest thing is we've got this $15,000 medical bill and I don't know how we're going to take care of it. Boom. Okay. So now when we go into negotiations and they want $50,000 for the property and it's worth, I don't know, 80 because we were going to double close it, we can now sell from the need. Okay. And what I mean by that is, hey, Kendall, earlier you did tell me that $15,000 bill was stressing you out. If I could get you a $30,000 check and you could take care of that medical bill, what would that do for you? You're not selling on logic. You're selling on emotion. That's the difference here. And people can still tell us no. Hey, if it doesn't make sense for you to work with us, that's fine. But what I can tell you is I like stacking the odds in my favors. I like doing business to boost probability. And what I know is when I sell with emotion, the probability of a lead, a prospect doing business with us goes up. And so that's how we position this so that it's not you versus me, right? It's us against this medical bill. So I know there's a long roundabout way to tell this, but that's how we position this to not be a Kendall versus Ajay, right? That's how we position this to be a Kendall with Ajay against this other thing. It's the same thing with vices. Ben, my COO, and I talk about this all the time. If like you were struggling with drinking, for example, like instead of it being like a you versus you, oh man, I just am struggling with this and I need to do this and I da da da. If you make it you versus alcohol, it helps change the battle in your head. We're trying to do the same thing with the prospect. We don't want them to think it's you versus me. We want them to think it's us versus this thing in their life that's driving them pain. And we are the solution. Right? Now, remember, I think Donald Miller, if you're familiar with him, he's an author that wrote this beautiful book called Building a Story Brand. He frequently talks about how when you're building a story brand, especially if you're selling a service, you have to be mindful that in your selling, you are not the hero. You want people to think they are the hero. You are guiding them. If anybody's here's a Star Wars fan, you're not Anakin, you're Yoda. Okay? That's what Donald Miller teaches. And Grant Cardone, he talks about how marketing is just sales at scale, right? And we, in our messaging, need to be communicating that, hey, like, you're the hero, I'm the guide, or whatever you want to call it. Like, I'm helping you make the decision through our marketing, through our sales, essentially. So that's how we make people feel like we're working together. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, that's brilliant on so many different levels because the more you're dealing in psychology, you're dealing in seller psychology, right? And so the more you get people to talk, the more they feel like you're a great listener and you're a great conversationalist, even if they're doing all the talking. And then it's just building rapport, right? Like how do they come away from that initial call feeling not necessarily just what they know, but like how did you make them feel? And if they feel safe, if they feel like they can trust you, you're that much further along. So I love that. Ajay, how do you handle when you are trying to approach it this way and a seller says, listen, that's a lot of questions. Just give me an offer. If you're gonna buy my property, I don't want to answer all this stuff. Like just give me the offer. How do you approach that?
So I'll tell you, we can avoid that by pre-framing, in my opinion. We found we don't get that when we start the conversation with, hi, Kendall, this is Ajay with Assets for Acres. I'm calling about your property in XYZ County. You chatted with my teammate Nix on Tuesday. Do you remember that conversation? Yes, I do. First, we're tying it back to the conversation they had. So now there's brand continuity, right? And now their guard goes down because they've already built rapport with your lead manager a little bit. Hey, Kendall, just for some context, this conversation should take about 15 minutes. I'm just going to start by confirming some information I have in front of me and then ask you just a couple of quick questions. Is now still a good time to chat? right? So this is a sales technique that Alex Hormozy talks about called assuming the sale. So rather than, hey man, like it's a good time to chat. Oh, by the way, land and property and offer and this, that, right? Like you're like, you need to come in confident and assume the sale. Hey, like you tell them what's going to happen on this call. You set the tone, right? You frame essentially. And so we thought when we frame that, that's the first 3 sentences, dude. Like we do that. Yeah, like they're going to give you permission. And once they've given you permission, great. So now I can start by confirming information, which is, okay, I see here Nick said you bought the property in 1981. What was going on in 1981? You see how this flows?
Yep.
And that's
Yep.
how we get into it. And so we have found that when we frame, we get a lot less of people getting frustrated. And if they
That's
do get
fantastic.
frustrated, man, it's an objection and just be like, hey, listen, I thought you were interested in an offer. And for us to make an offer, we've got to ask some questions about it. I think a lot of people have heard that stuff before. I just find that you get ahead of objections before they happen rather than letting them happen and then handling the objection. Okay. And so I actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to tie this into another piece that I really want people to understand on the sales front.
Absolutely.
There's only 4 types of objections. Okay. Now, people are going to call these they're slightly different depending on who you sales train with. I can't remember if this was, I don't know, there's so many different people I've watched on YouTube, but there's only 4 types of objections. Okay. It's certainty, which is trust, right? Do they think they're going to get the outcome that we're all talking about, which in our case is, do they trust you that you're going to give them the money? It's price, obvious, right? Price is a pretty big deal. People can object on price. Spouse/partner. Got to talk to my wife, got to talk to my husband, got to talk to my brother, my cousin, whatever, right? Business partner, spouse, sibling, that type of deal. And then it's time. And timing can be 2 things. So there's time as in like terms, like instead of a 30-day close because they need the money really fast, 90, 180. Or it can be, now's not a good time to sell the property. We just had a death in the family and you just need to follow up at a later time. And so those are the only 4 types of objections is what I'll say. And so you're trying to get ahead of them in your sales script, which is where if I'm hearing somebody's married or they like, one of the questions we're going to ask is, are you the only owner of the property? Is there anybody else we need to check with? It's like the easier way. Hey, and if we were to make you an offer on the property, is there anybody else we need to check with? Yeah, I got to talk to my wife. Got it. Okay. And I'm assuming like, have you and your wife already talked about selling the property? Or, and again, I sell with humor, so maybe don't use this, but I'd be like, oh, is our conversation some secret mission right now? You know, are you in a secret mission? It's goofy, but it gets people to laugh and smile. And that's how I sell. You don't need to use that. That's what I would use. But yeah, we have talked about it. Got it. So are you guys already aligned in terms of like price and what you would do if you were to get an offer? Yes or no? If the answer is no, go set up a time with the wife, right? Bring the potential, get ahead of the objection. If it's like, how do you get ahead of certainty? That one's the toughest one. That's where you'll frequently get like I need to think about it. Right? If you got that, they don't trust you more often than not. Sometimes there's some other stuff going on, but typically they don't believe you're going to deliver. They think you're a scam, right? And there's different ways you can go about that. Again, rapport is going to help build trust. Talking about, hey, we work with reputable title companies and attorneys. You can call any of them. I've got money in escrow, whatever. There's different ways you can go about it. But what I find is when you take off a mask and talk to somebody like a human, I just got an LOI in a big development deal, and I'll watch my language because I don't know if there's kids in cars or what's going on. But I was talking to them. We were going back and forth on this LOI, the letter of intent, which is supposed to be the simplest piece because we had a non-circumvent agreement that they wouldn't go talk to our seller basically. And I said to him, I said, dude, my only concern here is that you don't go around us. Basically, don't be a jerk. That's the nice word that I'll use. And we both laughed about it. Okay. And I was like, hey, whatever legalese your lawyers want to put together, fine. But just don't be a jerk and try to reoffer at the closing table or go around us and talk directly to the seller or wait for our contract to expire. That's all we're trying to do here. And he was like, got it, cool. And we were good. But when you take off masks, it's just so much easier to sell when you just like connect to people as humans and try to help genuinely, right? And so anyways, in the light of objections and getting ahead of them, right? Certainty, you got to build trust. Spouse, talk about it ahead of time. Price, that's a negotiation thing. You can ask for price. You can see it ahead of time, that type of thing. And then timing. In our pitch, which is like a term of before we offer price, we go through our pitch, which is, hey, just so you know, here's how we operate and the things that are enticing about working with us. We can close our deals in X amount of time, right? That's where we set the foundation for timing. We don't negotiate on time. We just tell them, hey, typically we close our deals in about 90 days. We work with trusted attorneys and title companies. We just like literally, again, assume the sale. We just lump it all into our pitch, right? Any questions on that? No, that sounds good. All right, got it. So we try to get ahead of those 4 objections if we can, and that just makes the sale, so to speak, that much easier.
Listen up, land fans. This is huge. We're bringing you the one and only Pace Morby, star of A&E's Triple Digit Flip and the mastermind behind $450 million in real estate deals. He's coming to our virtual meetup on Thursday, December 5th to share how he's applying his creative financing genius to land deals. Head to olfmeetup.com to save your spot today. That's olfmeetup.com. This is the kind of opportunity that changes everything. Yeah, that's great. And so when you are in negotiations, you're in that particular phase of the conversation, how hard do you push?
Oh man. I'm like, I'm 57 years old. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if you guys have seen those videos. I am really excited about this Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight. I'm throwing a mastermind for a couple of days in DFW, just like a couple of guys at a house, and then we all go to the fight at the end of it or something. But it just looks super interesting. Sorry. Anyways, how hard do I go in negotiations? The thing about negotiations is like we're selling with emotion, and that's like before we get there, before we have to sell with emotion, we have the offer presentation. Before we get there, we test by shifting blame. Okay. And what does that mean? Like the first offer should be insulting in any land business. Truthfully, logically, if you have a 200 grand property, my first offer is going to be 80 grand. You're going to spit in my face if we were in person, right? I'm insulting you if we're being honest and you know what your property is worth. That's just the way it goes. Okay.
If you're enjoying this episode of the OnlyLandFans podcast, please let us know by subscribing and leaving a review. Now let's get back to the action.
But what I can tell you is that's just how the business is operated, and that's what we need to do. So in order to do that and people not hang up on us and get the, all right, we got nothing to talk about, you have a nice day, because we've all gotten that. In order to not get that, what we do is I would say, hey, Kendall, so look, man, I'm seeing other investors in this area are paying between $70,000 and $80,000 for properties like yours. What would you say if one of those investors made an offer like that to you? Two things to note out of that. All right. Number one, you're not making the offer. If they're in that range, they could say yes. They'd be able to probably work out. And then you can drill into what probably means. Maybe start with a mirror, probably, right? And then go into that, right? If anybody's read Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference, tons of good stuff in there on hostage situations and different negotiation tactics. But the point being, number one, I'm going to start by shifting blame. And then number two, I'm going to give myself an out by asking what they would say to one of those other investors. If they freak out and they're like, dude, I would not take anything near that. I'd be like, dude, I get it. These investors out here are making super low offers, man. Again, I'm just seeing what investors are paying. So I guess if that's not what you're going to take, that tells me you have a number in mind. Can you help me understand what that is? 140. Got it. Man, I like 140. Where'd you get that number? And now we're going to start going down some talk tracks you guys have heard before. I saw my neighbor, Got it. It looks like your neighbor cleared the property and maybe it already had a water tap on it, or those things that you've already got ready to go. Like you can start with logic, right? And just see if you can get them down that way. But then we want to start tapping into emotional. And eventually, if it hits a no, that's where we start going hard. So if I'm selling on emotion and I'm like, Kendall, you told me you like really wanted to get that used Lambo that your buddy was selling to you for 90 grand. And if we got you 100 grand, we'd be able to take care of that. What do you think about that? No, dude, listen, like my property is worth at least 140. I'll sell it for 140. Got it. Okay. So now we got to play hardball. You've already not got the deal, right? Now you might over long follow-up and this, that, and the other. Yeah, screw all that. I'm trying to get the deal today. Okay. I'm trying to boost the probability of getting my deal today. And how I do that is I'd say, Kendall, can I ask, what happens if you don't get that offer price? What happens then? Right? I'm going to start with there. What happens if you don't get that? I'll get it because property owners are worth that. Just to be transparent with you, like earlier, you told me one of our questions we ask is if they've had any other offers, and if they have, why they haven't taken them. So like trying to uncover potential objections there. So typically by this point, we like have that info. And I would say, hey, Kendall, like you told me nobody's made you an offer that you would take yet. So I'm curious, why do you think that's going to change? Okay. And then it would just go to my kids. Okay. Got it. And are your kids aware of either X pain point, or are your kids aware of what it takes to take care of the property? Oh, is that already, if something were to happen to you tomorrow, is that already in your will? Do you have your estate planned? And I'll tell you, most people are really scared of that line. They're like really, because people don't like talking about death. We've had at least 3 sellers thank us for that line. They're like, actually, no, I should call my estate attorney. Thank you. So
Wow.
man, hey, at least we're saving people from some messier deaths. And that's just a terrible thing that people need to deal with. In the least, if I get nothing out of running this marketing and sales business, I have helped people plan their estates a little bit smoother.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, we'll play that hardball and be like, hey, make them think about death. Make them think about what if they don't get their price. Make them think about these things. And listen, if at the end of that, they still don't want to sell to us, that's cool. We have more leads. Not every lead is going to work with us. But what I know is that we raise the probability of working with somebody when we do sell on emotion, when we do have negotiation talk tracks, when we pre-frame objections ahead of time, when we set the call correctly. And so there are these things built in that are meant to serve you if you formulate the call well. And that's where I say this is all a sales process. Like, people don't understand that sales is a process. It's not just, oh, dude, I'm charismatic and people like me and they laugh when we hang out. Yeah, that's a piece of it. But like, we're doing a volume in a sense, right? Like, we have a lot of leads we're churning through, most of us, depending on what you're doing. And you need to be somewhat efficient in that, which means if you want to scale making offers, which earlier we said were the fastest way to kill your business if you stopped doing, which inversely means it's probably a very high leverage activity to get really good at and ensure you do very often, right? If we want to scale that, we should make sure it is scalable. And things are scalable if they have a process, is my point here. So sorry, I'll shut up now.
No, that's so good. That's so good. Fantastic answer. You've mentioned process. You've mentioned the presentation of the offer a few different times. Can you just give us an overview, like a high level view of what is the formula? Like, this is the first phase, this is the second phase, this is the third phase of both of your calls, call 1 and call 2.
Yes. Okay. I guess when you're asking that, do you mean like how the calls are broken out? Just to make sure I understand.
Yeah. So if in your mind, if you have different phases of your call, like this is the intro, this is the pacing the objection, how do you view that in your mind from a high level perspective?
Totally. First thing, high level, the call of the lead manager, first call, is to qualify or disqualify, because we have 2 things we need to qualify or disqualify. We have a prospect, a seller, and then we have a property, right? These are 2 different things. So the first thing, I'm all about speed. People have heard me say this before. I make up acronyms and alliteration and assonance and all the things. But my goal is to eliminate bad stuff as quickly as possible and expedite good things as quickly as possible. Get rid of the junk in your pipe and move things forward as quick as you can, right? To keep things clean and to do the freaking deal. And so anyways, the lead manager is going to get rid of properties that have crap access, terrible topo, covered in wetland or floodplain, and we can't, just reasons we would kill a deal based on the geography potentially. And then again, if it's a undivided interest and they don't know all these things, and I don't have a business where I deal with a lot of messy title. I've done some probates and I've done some stuff like that, but if it's something like that, we're not going to sink our teeth into it. And so they're trying to disqualify is like the first sort of like underlying message here. And then they're trying to qualify at the same time, right? It's twofold and they fall in one of the 2 buckets essentially. And if it's gray, they should go ahead and just qualify them and let's make the offer and shoot our shot basically. And so anyways, I bring that up to say our process from the lead manager is less structured today. I'll tell you, it is actually my weekly task. Ben and I just got done with our level 10 meeting today. And my weekly task is to put more process in place for our lead manager call. That being said, it is really simple. It's intro, it's frame, right? Hey, this is Nikki with Assets for Acres. This call is supposed to take 10 minutes just to help me understand a little bit more about your property so we can make an offer in the next 24 to 48 hours. Is this a good time to chat? A lot of times we actually have our team scheduling appointments though, which is not something a lot of people do for some reason. It has been phenomenal for our business.
I love scheduling schedule appointment. We do in my business, we use Calendly because it'll send automatic updates.
Same.
I love that. Yeah.
It has been phenomenal and a game changer for us. And I can speak to how we do that a little bit later. But in that, intro, frame, and then it's discovery, right? Now, the discovery from the lead manager is a lot more factual, is how I would put it. It's a lot more just help me understand the things to either qualify or disqualify. But ideally, we're having a good, meaningful conversation. So at the very end, the close, so to speak, is to get an asking price. Okay. The difference is over in our like closing call, offer presentation, second call, basically. It's intro, frame, and then we go straight into past, present, future. And then it's the pitch, right? Into the offer and then negotiation, talk tracks, and close. And the reason I have the close as a separate piece is because we try to get contracts signed live. It's a piece of our sales process that has helped us really boost how many people sign property contracts. Because gosh, if you've been in this business for any amount of time, you've gotten a verbal from a seller and then they either don't sell a contract for some duration of time or they just ghost you, which is
yes.
right? And so the way we mitigate for that is we get contracts signed live. Now, so that's the close for us. And sometimes we'll either schedule another appointment or we'll say, hey, like I got to get this offer approved and we'll follow up. And I have all this in that script that I shared with your team. So all that is broken out and I actually bolded and labeled the different pieces. Again, it's a really simple 2-page script. It's not anything crazy. Don't put scripts in a box. Again, they're meant to be frameworks. They're not meant to be read off of. They're really just meant to support you and help you if you get lost in a conversation while also giving you a framework to boost your probability for success. Did that answer the question?
That answered it perfectly. Follow-up question to that is, how do you actually go about disqualifying? So obviously the lead manager is trying to disqualify. You mentioned earlier that there are some objections that are just deal killers. So what does a disqualified seller sound like? What do they say that would say, hey, this is not a qualified lead?
Totally. Great question. The first one is just going to be like ownership issues. When we learn about title problems, we don't deal with them. The second one is just like vulgar or like nasty people. If I had a seller that like said some really funky, like life or death type stuff on a call once, and I just told my team, block them. We're not dealing with that. I don't care how much money we can make on a lead, and they're probably just being goofy with us. So anything inappropriate like that is an instant, just like, no. There are plenty of normal people on this planet. Get some funky sellers, don't get me wrong, but plenty of like normal enough people in this business that you can run a business off of that. And so yeah, title issues where like ownership is an issue would be like a seller disqualification variable, or yeah, just like really difficult to deal with people, which again, I think if you frame stuff well and you build good rapport, they happen less often than a lot of other people would think. Those are the first two things coming to mind. And then from the deal perspective, if there's a house on it, if it's landlocked and there's no real easy way to get access, if the topography is absolutely garbage, if it's all wetland and like the only utility for a property like that would be building it, if it were a 1/4 acre lot in Florida and it was all wetland and had a protected wildlife species on it, probably would not buy that. Just like that type of stuff from the property perspective.
Okay. Yeah. And at what phase do you guys actually qualify or disqualify the property? Do you do that before you get on the phone with the seller, or you do it after?
Yes, we do it before we get on the phone with the seller because number one, there's no guarantee a seller picks up a phone call on the first try. In fact, most of them do not. And because of that, we would prefer to eliminate anything that would take bandwidth, especially because when you look at it from like an investment of time perspective, your lead manager is going to spend 1 to 5 minutes qualifying the property, right? You get it up on map, right? And you run it through 5 different layers, basically, right? And
okay,
so,
that's a really important thing that I want to point out. I've seen a lot of people qualify the property and take 40 minutes running full comps and all this other stuff before they even get on the phone with the seller, which is like the total opposite of what we're trying to do, right? You're just looking for very basic, is it wetlands? Does it have road access? That kind of thing that would kill the deal from a map standpoint.
Because it's 80-20, right? Like if I just get rid of stuff that would clog up my pipeline or be a deal I'm not sure I could do, and then get on the phone with people and then learn it, like I have less deals that we start talking to the prospect and then we like have to kill the deal than I do of like properties we spent too much time, whatever the inverse of that is. And so, we're all about really fast elimination in phase one. And we'll do more due diligence later. Like after we get a contract signed, that's when our team calls all the local county offices. We'll get realtors to go walk properties in person. It's like that type of stuff. But we don't do that until a contract's signed. Why would I bother a realtor until a contract is signed? That's something people do all the time that I'm like, what are you doing? You don't even know if the seller's going to work with you. You don't even know if they're going to sign your contract. You don't even know if they're going to pick up the phone tomorrow, dude. Get a contract signed before you go bother a realtor. You're just wasting your time. You're wasting their time. Like, I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I look at it as almost two different phases of due diligence, right? One is super, super quick. And then once you get a contract signed, now you can actually do some deeper due diligence. Totally in line with that. Now, another component of this topic that we mentioned earlier was, how do you sell for more? So let's get into that vein. Talk to us about, all right, we have talked through the process of how do we buy it for less. Now, how do we sell it for more?
Yep. Great question, Kendall. A lot of this is going to sound similar. I think for whatever reason, in 2021 and 22, I watched a lot of people work really hard on acquisitions and continue to. But because land sold easily, I guess more in the first half of 22, and then we started seeing stuff drop off. But with interest rates getting hiked up, blah, blah, blah. I saw a lot of people and continue to see people who put tons of process in place in acquisitions. And then on the dispo side, they list it with the realtor
And pray.
and pray, wait for offers to come in. And I'll call out, because he's on the call, Mr. Ajay Sharma. We actually did a webinar with him back in, gosh, it was probably a year ago now. But it was a wake-up call for me, because he walked us through a lot of the process that he was doing with his buyer leads that like woke me up to realize, oh snap, I need dispo process if I want more controllable revenue. Because everybody in real estate says you make your money when you buy, but I can't pay my bills when I buy land, right? Now, what's cool is those real estate guys get to say that in houses because they can borrow against the houses. We can't really borrow against our land and pay our bills with it. So it's really important that we have somewhat controllable sales. Now, I can't control whether it's going to sell on March 5th or March 12th necessarily, but on a long enough time horizon, say over a quarter, I can control roughly how many properties I'm going to sell within a deviation if I do a certain set of activities. Okay, so anyways, that's the first piece of thing that I just want to set in stage is people need to realize you need process on your dispo side if you want to control your sales. I don't trust realtors. Like, okay, sorry, I shouldn't say that. I work with plenty of brokers and they do a great job, but holistically speaking, they're people, and most people are bad, just like what they do. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like,
and no one's going to care about your deal at the same level that you care about your deal, right?
No way. No way. Yeah, I agree. And I say that about all our vendors. Nobody cares more about my business than I do. Why would I trust that they're going to get this thing done better than I would, right? Like you need, if you're going to be a business owner, you have to be willing to sink your teeth into stuff and learn it. Don't get me wrong, delegate, hire masters, hire people better than you at stuff. But like nobody should know your business better than you, okay? And selling properties is an essential part of our business. And so anyways, I'll go back to the foundation. I said this at the very beginning. You need two things in this business. You either have one of two problems, I should say. Leads, conversion. That's it. Okay. So if you don't have leads, you don't have people to sell your property to. If you don't have conversions on those leads, you suck at sales. That's it. Okay. Now, here's the thing about buyer leads is they are so much more qualified than a seller lead. And what I mean by that is like the sales are easier in the sense that this person has already qualified on price because they've raised their hand and said, oh, hey, look, this property is worth or listed for 120 and I'm interested in it. So we already know we're in the ballpark. I don't have that with my sellers. I guess unless I did a blind offer campaign. So maybe that's an exception. But generally speaking, I do all neutral campaigns and have for 2 years now. And so when we're talking to dispo, I need to generate leads. Leads are much more qualified. Okay. There's a few different ways you can generate leads. Most of ours don't come from anywhere secret. We've got land.com. We've got MLS. We have not bridged into marketplace or Facebook ads yet. It's something that's on our like Q2, Q3 board. The one thing we do different than everybody else is we cold call the whole block. We moved 5 properties that way last year, and we've already moved 2 properties this year that way. And when I say the whole block, typically a list of 20 to 40 people that live nearest to our subject property. We will cold call every single one of them. People are like, oh yeah, I dropped letters. I'm like, dude, I can't sell to somebody through a letter. Like I can because Uncle G said marketing is sales at scale, and I get that. But when you're talking about driving to a call to action, I could do it easier on a phone call than I can through a letter. Okay. It's a one-sided communication is the issue. And so I have my dispo manager. She's American based in North Florida, lives on 40 acres. So she gets the profile of a lot of our buyers, and she cold calls literally 20 to 40 people almost every day. Now, not everybody picks up, but we get very interested leads from neighbors. People stop doing neighbors. Okay. Now we have MLS, we have land.com, but the point is generate leads. Okay. And if you can't do it just by posting and waiting, then go outbound, call neighbors, call realtors. Those are 2 things we'll do to call outbound. And then if you need to generate more, go to Facebook Marketplace, run Facebook ads, figure that stuff out. But generate leads or convert. Those are 2 problems, right? Leads, conversion. That's it. That's the only problems we can have. Okay. So again, back to Mr. Ormozzi's question of if I were to stop one activity, like what would ensure that the business dies? The first one would be just like to not market my properties, right? If I don't tell anybody they're for sale, they're probably not going to sell until a land investor sends me a letter and I sell it at 50% of market value. The odds are I need to tell the world, hey, I'm selling a property. So market, number 1. And then number 2, actually work your freaking leads. And here's what that means for us. And again, we learned a lot of this from Entrel. We learned some from other people. We made some of this our own. And here's what we do and have come up with, okay, is when leads come into our pipe, We qualify based on a script. And what we're looking for is financial qualification. We're looking for time commitment. Again, it's the same deal killers. There's 4 things. Okay. So they need to think you're legit, which is pretty easy because you're on legit platforms. They need to be aligned in timing. Hey, are you prepared to buy a property if you find one you like in the next 30 to 60 days? They need money so you can talk over owner finance, access to other financing / pre-approvals, or cash. And then it's spouse. Hey, does your wife know you're out shopping for this property? Oh, so you guys have talked about this, right? There's only 4 objections. Get ahead of them. Okay. So we do all that in our script. Now, the next thing, and this is the thing that we got from Ontrol that was super valuable for our business, is you get a level of commitment from a lead when you know they've walked the dirt. Okay. This is something people forget a lot. But land, dude, you're just going to get so much more commitment from a lead if they have seen the property. Because if they've seen the price and you've qualified them and they've walked the property, there is either an objection, which you can isolate, overcome, or there's like an objection that you can't overcome, right? But ideally, you isolate, overcome it, or they're going to buy the property, right? They're going to buy the property and you need to work that lead, right? Because people are lazy and our job as salespeople is to help people make decisions. And we can do that when we get information. Again, none of this stuff is new, right? But
Right.
you need to,
Right.
in this sense, it's marketing and sales. And so generate leads. Our process is work those leads. We triple dial them daily. Okay. We are aggressive. Yes. And we triple dial them daily. And our next step is to get them to the property. How we do that is we drive urgency. I would say, hello, Mr. Kendall, Mr. Lejeune. I see you're interested in the property. I want you to know we've been getting a lot of interest in the property. I don't care whether you've only gotten 1 lead or 1,000. Okay. You always tell the seller, I've gotten a lot of interest on the property. I'd like you to go out and see the property if you're interested in it, but I just want to make sure you have the property to yourself. That's what we say. We schedule an appointment to get them on the dirt. Okay.
That's good. That's good.
For us. You drive urgency to do that. So when do you think you can get out there in the next 48 hours? Now, the reason for the next 48 hours is I always say I am trying to reduce the number of times a buyer or a seller does one of 3 things: eats, sleeps, poops. Okay. The reason those 3 activities are every time you do one, you're in a different headspace before and after. Don't believe me? Pay attention next time you do one of those 3 things. You're not thinking about the same thing before and after more often than not. Okay. And so 48 hours ensures that only so many of those activities have occurred with an individual. And I'm just trying to get them on a property as quick as possible. Once they've walked it, they're a very qualified lead. I am going to follow up with that lead very aggressively and be like, hey, did you like the property? Did you not like the property? What did you not like about it? Honestly, dude, like I really liked it. There's just a lot of brush out there. It was hard for me to do this and that. I don't know. I'm just a lot of got it. So Kendall, if I got all the brush off the property, do you think we'd be able to do the deal? Would you be interested in purchasing it? I guess and here's how I would really do it is in sales, it's called a tie down, is to basically get verbal confirmations. So be like, hey, if the brush wasn't a part of this, would you be moving forward? And if they're like, oh yeah, got it. So they just gave me the go ahead. So let me ask Kendall, if I paid a couple $1,000, got somebody with a bush hog to go out there and clear that brush, could we do the deal? Because you just said that we could, right? Yes, got it. So now I've isolated the objection, right? And the way I know I've isolated it is through that mechanism of a tie down by like getting them to confirm, hey, this is the only thing in the way. And if they hesitate, there's more and you need to keep digging. But our job as salespeople is to get information so we can help the prospect make a decision. Okay. Mm-hmm. And if it's something like, hey, dude, honestly, it's just too wet for me. It's hard to. Hey, like you saw the pictures. How wet did you think the property, or what exactly about the wetness is not good? Like you can drill down and maybe there's something there, but that's the process. Is you need to generate leads, you need to drive people to properties, and then you need to push to get, okay, got it. So can I send you a contract? Because I've got a few other parties asking, and you were the first one out there. And so I want to honor it, like first come, first serve. Or you can do whatever you want. But the point being, those are our 3 big buckets. Leads come in, we qualify, and then we get them to book an appointment. After that, they're ready for a contract. And if they're not ready for a contract, we need to isolate and overcome. That's it. And so that's what we're doing. And like, it's not rocket science. It's all pretty simple stuff. I just think people don't treat their buyer leads the same way they would a lot of seller leads. And if you did, you'd be shocked at how much revenue you can drive.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So what are some of the most common objections that you get on the buyer side? And how do you overcome those objections? You mentioned that you gave us a great example with it needs to be cleared, talked a little bit about it's too wet, but are there any other objections that you come across that you're like, okay, that's an easy thing to overcome?
Yeah, clearing and junk come up a decent amount. You do stuff in rural areas, you get some junk, you get a junk removal guy out there. You should have picked it up in pictures and done it ahead of time, get an old boy on Craigslist to take care of it or whatever. So those are 2 that comes up. Spouse is not an uncommon one. Just like if they liked it, but their wife didn't, that's a tougher one alive to just be like, so if your wife did like the tree on the northeast part of the property, would we be doing the deal? Like it's a little goofier. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, totally.
Like there are ways to, okay, got it. So is that tree the only reason you're not doing? So there's like ways to isolate it. Don't get me wrong. But spouse ones are a little bit tougher generally. And then just, I don't know, anything else that could deter somebody. Like sometimes topography is a little bit different, scenery is a little different. If they don't like the roads or they thought it would look different or a neighbor scared them off or something. There's all these little things that can happen. I can tell you we've only been managing our dispo side more aggressively in the past 2 quarters. I've got a lot less data than maybe some other folks that have been really intentional on that side. But that's stuff we run into regularly. Honestly, a lot of our stuff has been spouse clearing and junk is a lot of what we've gotten.
Awesome. I love it.
And of course, price, but like it's a whole negotiation again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Back to the fundamentals of negotiation.
Totally.
So, one of the big pieces of both of these processes, whether you're dealing with sellers or you're dealing with buyers, is clearly the follow-up process. So, can you talk a little bit about how you create a follow-up cadence? What does your follow-up cadence look like? What are the best practices around that?
Totally. So we are aggressive. And my underlying methodology is that I can't do business with a lead I can't connect with. And so we optimize for what we call the connection rate, which really just means like they picked up the phone. Because I'm a big believer that business is done over the phone. Okay. That's where you can build rapport. That's where I can uncover objections. Like when I'm texting somebody and we're negotiating over price, it's a logical argument. I'm not negotiating on emotion because nobody's telling me that their mom died and they're stressed about the funeral bills over text, I promise. But you can uncover that stuff over a phone call. So we optimize for the connection rate because our business is largely driven by phone sales. Okay. Now to do that, number one, we're booking appointments. Okay. So straight from Pat Live does do our answering and they book appointments. I don't know why nobody else does this. They book appointments. You give them the calendar link and Pat Live will book the appointment on your lead manager's calendar. And my lead manager job is to book an appointment on my closer's calendar. My closer's job is to get a contract signed or book an appointment on their calendar again to get the contract signed. So that's the first thing, because you can send out those auto reminders 24 hours before, an hour before, 10 minutes before, and it boosts what we would call a show rate, right? People actually showing up to the call, or they'll cancel it, reschedule it a lot more often, which just adds some predictability into your lead managers and your closers day to day, because they know what calls are coming up and can work the leads outside of that. But it helps. And I promise you will connect with more people if you are booking appointments. There's a level of commitment that the sellers get when they fill out the Calendly link a lot of times. Now, we're testing ads in different places. When we were texting, we would have our texting VAs get the time out of the seller and then have the texting VA fill out the calendar link, because I want the onus of the least amount of activities on the sellers because it adds more variables for them to not do things. Okay. So I want to be very mindful of like how you manage kind of the calendar and the calendar link. But all that being said, if you can get at least a time confirmation, you can fill it out on your end and have them get the reminders via email and text message. Okay.
Yeah,
So
that's a great point, because you mentioned we get a discount by being easy to work with. We make it as easy as possible. And so if you just set everything up for them, make the customer experience super, super easy, then lots of times they'll do the deal with you just because it's easy to work with you.
And so the easier it is, like you just got to be leading them through the thing. You know what I mean? You're the leader in this scenario. Again, you're Yoda, right? You're guiding them through this process. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So we're booking appointments. After that, like we're triple dialing. For anybody that this is the first time like hearing what that is, I'll give you a quick rundown. I feel like I've talked about it so much the past year. It's funny. I used to double dial. Now I triple. People now started have joking with me. I think Josiah Ronco meme and Ari Tipster that I like did the Hicks double dial or something. I don't know, man. People are now, but we triple dial in the first 48 hours, 1 to 2 times a day. Okay. And a triple dial is, hey, I call. If I get a voicemail, I hang up. I wait 5 seconds. I call. I get a voicemail, I hang up. I wait 5 seconds. I call. The reason for the 5-second pause is to make sure the seller registers it as different calls. The reason for the triple dial is to invoke curiosity, because a lot of times we're calling from numbers that potentially have a spam risk on them, but you should register your phone numbers. And I think we've got an SOP on that somewhere, but you should register your phone numbers to make sure that ideally you don't get marked as spam. And then if you're not doing that, okay, you might get marked as spam. But aside from that, you're calling from a phone number they don't have saved in their phone. Guys, just be a human. Like, how often are you answering phone calls from numbers you don't have saved in your phone? Not that often, right? But if they called you 3 times back to back, I promise you'd probably pick up, right? Because now you're thinking in your head, you're curious. You're like, oh, snap. Did I forget a pizza? Did I forget dry cleaning? Somebody in jail? What's going on? Is a kid in trouble? Did somebody get hurt at school? Whatever. There's so many things that run through your head when you have the same phone number, which is registered through short-term memory, call and call, right? And triple dial because it boosts that connection rate. People might not pick up on the first dial, might not pick up on the second, but we have found in the first 48 hours when we triple dial 2 to 4 times, we have about a 62% pickup rate, I think, which is really significant in my opinion.
Yeah.
Leads, right? It ebbs and flows. When we were double dialing, we would get a consistent 43 maybe. And then we started triple and we were shocked that more people picked up on the triple. And so maybe we quadruple, I don't know. But here's the thing too, anybody that's doing this for the first time, it's only weird if you make it weird. Okay, so when somebody picks up on the third dial and they're just like, dude, what are you calling about? Act normal, okay? It's only weird if you make it weird. Kendall, just calling about the property on 123 Main Street. You had submitted this ad or whatever. Just want to see if you were still interested in an offer. Great. And then you frame the call. Okay.
Love it.
So
love it.
Act normal. People will follow suit. It's not like when you're somewhere you're not supposed to be, or like, have you ever seen those videos of people that go to Disney World and they've got like a vest and a ladder, but they just walk in so security lets them in? If you act like you belong, people will just follow suit. It's crazy. Okay. So lean into that. So yeah, we're triple dialing like crazy, man.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Let's jump over to metrics a little bit, because I know that you're a big fan of tracking KPIs in the EOS world, and I share that passion for metrics with you. Can you talk to us a little bit about what metrics are you tracking in your business and how do you use them to inform your decisions?
Totally. The first thing I'll say is we're talking about what metrics to track. I'm going to start with what metrics not to track, and not actually name specific metrics, but note whatever you ask your team to communicate to you through a metric, they will view as important. Okay. I'm going to say that one more time. Whatever metrics you ask your team to report to you, they will view as important. So if I'm asking them, hey, tell me how long you were on the phone today, or how many appointments you booked, or how many times you tied your shoe, they're going to think tying their shoe is super important, right? Like, you want to be very careful. How many bathroom breaks did you take? Oh God, now they're paying attention to their bathroom breaks. Be careful, right? And what I recommend is don't give any individual more than 3 to 7 to monitor. Now, how we do metrics, like, I'm not an automation king or queen or whatever. Callan Faulkner is the best person I know in terms of automations, and she tracks stuff. She's brilliant. I love her. She's a good friend of mine.
Absolutely. The best.
Super excited for Land Camp here next month.
Yes, Land Camp. Can't wait.
But I absolutely love and adore Callan. My point, though, is I am a big manual shop. I don't recommend that to people. That's just what we do because I like simplicity. One of the biggest ways you can kill a business is through complexity and the wrong people in the business. Okay. And so I like simplicity and the right people in the business. Now, anyways, all this to say, I try to keep my metrics simple, and you don't want any individual to track more than 3 to 7. Now, of the 3 to 7, I have everybody track. It all aggregates into what we call our stoplight report, which is like the 5 or 6 metrics that basically help us monitor the health of the business. I didn't invent these. I learned these from Stephanie Betters and Chandler Sane and Ren Bartlett and like all these people that are doing, multi 7 and 8 figures in wholesaling. And these 5 or 6 metrics, and I'm saying 5 or 6 because I don't know how many I'm about to list, but I'm just going to walk through them. Again, I know concepts. Number 1 is gross leads, right? How many leads are you getting? Really simple. I just want to know how many leads we're getting in every day. Whatever marketing channel you're using, just see how many you push into your CRM. Super simple thing to track, right? Number 2 is our net leads, which for us is just how many connections did you have? So the number we track is seller conversations at the individual level. Typically at the lead manager level, it's how many people did you talk to? And then we'll get into some other stuff later. Okay. But that's how many of our leads we actually connected with. That indicates our connection rate. That tells me just, hey, if you're getting 100 leads, but you're only connecting with 60, there's probably something we can do to improve that. Right. And so I want to connect, like I'm paying for my leads. I want to connect with them. I want to talk to them and figure out if we can do business together. That's number 2. After our connection rate is going to be, I think it's our offers, right? How many offers are we making on a daily basis? You have me hesitating now, and I'm going to pull up my my KPI sheet. We just use a Google sheet. Like, we're so simple. Okay, no. So we actually track gross lead, net lead. Yeah. And then it's offers made. So how many offers am I making daily, weekly? You can aggregate, average, whatever you want to do. But again, number 1 deal killer or business killer on the acquisition side would just be to not make offers. And important in acquisitions, because if we don't make offers and we don't buy deals and get deals under contract, we don't have inventory. I can't make money, right? Offers made. After that, it's contract sent, right? You can call this whatever you want. It's verbals. Yes, I will do the deal. It's contract sent because we use DocuSign. We'll send it out. And then it's contract signed, right? After that, it's completed contracts. So those are the ones we do. I don't typically talk about completed contracts. I just want to know what my fallout is in title. Hey, did a title issue come up? Did the seller blow up the deal? Did we screw up something in the sales process? It's just another number to pay attention to. But those 6 numbers tell me the health of the business, and those are the ones we're monitoring on a daily and weekly basis. Okay. And in between each one of those is going to reveal a different bottleneck to me. Leads to net leads will tell me you're crap at your lead management. All right. You're not triple dialing twice a day daily for 2 weeks, whatever you want to do, but you're not getting a hold of your leads, dude. You're wasting money, is what that's telling me if your net lead sucks. I want to say industry standard is somewhere in between 65 and 80% for net leads on a rolling basis. So keep in mind, old leads pop up, new leads die, whatever. But on a rolling basis, somewhere between 65 and 80. I can't remember what the industry standard is. Leads, net leads. Okay. Net leads to offers made. Dude, if my ratio sucks, are we not making outbound calls? Are we just not making the offer? There's something there I need to dig into, though. Am I chickening out because of an asking price? But it tells a story, okay? Offers made to contract sent. Your close rate sucks, right? Depending on your lead quality. And this is huge. So like people love to ask, dude, what are your baseline numbers? This is where things really change. Because if I was doing Mojave County lots, I'd have a very different number than if I was only doing subdivides. And I'd have a very different number if I was only doing double closes in a 15K kind of spread buy box. And I'd have a very different number if I was only doing flips at 50% of margin value with 70K properties. You see what I mean? What I can tell you is our close rate, depending on lead quality, type of property, has ebbed and flowed. We do double closing, so take this with a grain of salt, but between 8 and 22%, depending on qualification and marketing channel. When we were doing direct mail, it was between 17 and 25. When we have done pretty much everything else, it's been between like 8 and 18. So super big ranges. And I don't know, just don't get worse than 5% is what I'll tell you. Like you should be closing like 1 in 20 offers that you make. If you don't, you like really suck. Really bad.
That's really good. That's really good stuff. Ajay, when we were preparing for this, you sent over some notes and you have a very fancy formula. And I'd like for you to go over this formula with us, if you wouldn't mind.
I forgot about this, man. I have been workshopping this for so long, and I don't know if it's done, but here we are. It is largely based on, again, Mr. Ormozy, whom I listen to fairly often. I probably have him or Layla. It's like one of the Ormozis in my ear, I don't know, 8 times a week.
Yeah.
A little bit. I'll listen to them at the gym, driving, walking, whatever, but very often. And they put out so much content, I can't keep up with it all now. But anyways, okay. Hormozy uses all these terms and service-based business. And so I'm trying to figure out, okay, business is just math, right? But it's not that simple. It's not just math. So what does that mean? And so here's what I put together. Is business, in my mind, is activities times volume, okay? And let's put those in brackets. I'm not like presenting, so I don't have anything to put up on the screen. But activities would be phone calls, right? Hey, I need to make calls, okay? And then volume would be like the number of that activity, right? I need to make calls. If I do 20 of those, I have my first number, right? So you have an assigned activity. When I say activity, it's like a thing you can do. I can make a call. I can send a text. I can drop a voicemail. I can make an offer, right? Activity times volume. Volume is just number of thing, number of activity, right? Plus process. The reason it's an aggregate is because activities times volume is one variable in my mind, right? So this would be like a 7x type deal. And process stacks, okay? Because if I had trash sales process, you're probably still closing about 1 in 20 deals. And if I have really good sales process, I might be able to close 1 in 8, 1 in 6, 1 in 5. So it's one of those things that in my mind, it stacks. And so right now I have it as an aggregate. I don't know if I'll change that to be a multiplier. I don't know. Don't overthink it. But the point being, those are the 3 variables that I want to pay attention to are activities, volume, and process is more of an intangible is the thing, which is why it's harder to just call it a multiplier. And here's what I mean by that. Like when we didn't have a negotiation talk track, somebody would be like, no, and the call would just end. We closed less deals. Negotiations are a process. I need to teach it, right? And something with your staff to note, and this is something I got out of a talk that I saw Red Bartlett do at a Collective Genius event. He said, people need to be coached and process needs to be managed. Okay. The delineation is you coach your people up, right? The same way we think about coaching and hiring a Kendall, right? Working with him to help me learn things better. That's how you should view working with your staff. The word management is just dirty. You manage process to make sure that your staff is executing on the process you've defined. Now, when you put those things together, they equate to results, right? So activities times volume, how many times are you doing the thing that drives a result, but you need process somewhere to drive the result at a different level. And process can be so many different things. It could be frequency, it could be scripts, it could be ownership, activities. There's a lot of things that change that. But those are the three variables that I deemed really drive results. And so every week when I'm thinking about, I have this bottleneck, okay, is this solved with, what do I need to be thinking through? Is it the activity? Is it the volume? Is it the process? When I have a lead or a conversion problem, what are things that I can do, right? Activities, I can post on the MLS, I can post on land.com. Okay, that's 2 platforms. I don't have volume at my play. Is there a different activity I can do to get volume? Yeah, I posted 70 marketplace groups. I don't know if that's going to help or not. Or I could boost and run Facebook ads, right? Dollars becomes volume. Volume equates to eyeballs, right? Process of how you manage those leads and sell then equates to results. And so those 3 variables are what I'm trying to articulate, equate to results. But at the end of the day, business truly is math with applied activities. Process is an applied activity. You learn process from other people or through repetition, experience, draw from your conclusions, get results. But anyways, sorry, I am beating this thing with a dead horse. The last thing I'm going to say on this is bad process is better than no process. So don't overthink this to the point where you don't execute on activities and accumulate volume. The fastest way to get good process is to learn from mistakes through volume. So just like do a bunch. If you do a bunch of calls, you'll get better at sales. Like it's that simple.
Absolutely. Yeah, completely agree. I think that, in my opinion, process is something that's going to constantly evolve based on
Totally.
you and your strengths and your styles. And so there is no one size fits all process. So your processes in your business may look very different from the ones in mine because we have different resources, we have different, propensities and things like that. But at the end of the day, have some form of structured thought in terms of how you're approaching each one of these activities and implement it, right? And get feedback and then make it better. So love that. Absolutely love that. So Ajay, I just want to thank you. You've given us so much volume, so much value, and I'm thinking about volume right now, but I am so thankful. And I love seeing how excited you get about this topic. Tell us, what are you looking for right now? Like, how can we give back to you? You've given so much to us. How can we give back to you right now?
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. You're welcome to, if I know some people need help with deals, like I've partnered with people on double closings before. If there's stuff and you need me to hop on the phone with maybe a seller, you feel like there's a deal there, but don't know how to present some stuff, like you're welcome to hit me up on that. Yeah, man, nothing too crazy right now. Honestly, just I hope people are getting value from this. Use the script. I might be throwing a couple of small events this year, some small masterminds. If anybody's interested, they're welcome to reach out. Best ways to get a hold of me are either to email me. Best email is ajay@assetsforacres.com or DM me on Instagram at investingwithajay. But throwing a couple of small masterminds this year if anybody wants to come out. Just a 5-6 person in a house, just a hot seat format. Let's work on each other's businesses together, break some bread, build some true relationships. One of them might end in a Jake Paul fight if anybody's interested in watching Mike Tyson beat up Jake Paul. But yeah, man, that's all I got right now.
I love it. Well, Ajay, always bringing the value. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everyone who joined live and asked some fantastic questions. Thank you for listening. On Thursday, in 2 days, we have our next masterclass, and it's actually going to be with Ajay's business partner and integrator, Benjamin Pijanowski. Ben, and so super excited to hear the integrator side of Ajay's business. Ajay is a visionary in his business. We'll listen to Ben and get some great insights with that. So please be sure to join us for that. Ajay, thank you so much again. You've been so generous. Thank you, everyone. Be great. Take care. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye. If you're interested in hearing from other 7-figure land flippers about how they've started and run their businesses, then join us at OnlyLandFans.com. Looking forward to seeing you there.